It's time to say goodbye, and this time, forever. Have you ever felt that, despite all your efforts, you can't emotionally disconnect from someone important in your life? That person seems to consume your energy, occupy every thought, and be present in every corner of your mind, influencing your emotions, your mood, and even your outlook on life. Perhaps this is someone with whom you've shared very significant moments, and even though you know this attachment might not be healthy, every memory or interaction seems to have the power to destabilize you. You try to convince yourself that you need to let go, to regain control over your mental and emotional peace. But each attempt seems to fail. A single word, an image, a memory, and suddenly you feel that same whirlwind of emotions again, making you feel trapped, as if you were a prisoner of your own thoughts. Has this happened to you? Do you feel that no matter how hard you try, you can't free yourself emotionally from that person? If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Many people experience this in silence, grappling with deep, difficult-to-release attachments, struggling with that need to disconnect from someone who still has an invisible hold on their life. Today, we're going to discover together the keys to breaking that cycle and achieving true emotional detachment, so you can regain your peace and begin to live with inner freedom. Why is it so difficult to emotionally detach from someone? When we think about it, in many cases we know that this person causes us more distress than well-being. Deep down, we understand that living in a constant state of attachment consumes and drains us. However, we remain connected as if our mind and emotions are trapped in an invisible web that binds and controls us. But really, what keeps us in this situation? The difficulty in letting go has much deeper roots than it seems. It's not simply about missing someone or desiring their presence. In reality, attachment has to do with internal patterns, unmet desires, and emotional needs that we carry within us, often without even realizing it. In the depths of our psyche, the people we love or with whom we develop intense bonds tend to fill a space we feel is missing in ourselves. It's as if, unconsciously, we assign them a crucial role in our lives, providing a sense of security or a feeling of worth and identity that in reality we should find within ourselves. This phenomenon is far more common than it appears, and its roots may lie in our personal history. If we've experienced rejection, abandonment, or insecurity in the past, those memories and experiences may still influence how we relate today. Without realizing it, we carry emotional baggage that conditions our relationships, leading us to depend more intensely on someone and to cling to that person in the belief that they will fill the emptiness we carry within. This brings us into a complex dynamic. Rather than seeing the other person as a human being with whom we share moments and experiences, we turn them into a source of something we feel we lack, something that only with that person can we achieve. However, this type of attachment often becomes a trap. It leads us to create an idealization or an imaginary role about that person, making us feel that without them we couldn't achieve well-being, calm, or happiness. This is where a key concept comes in: projection. In psychology, projection occurs when we assign to someone aspects of ourselves or things we believe we need in order to feel complete. Thus, we project onto the other person what we would like to have or what we think we need to be whole. When this happens, we create a connection that becomes an emotional anchor, and letting go or disconnecting from that person feels almost like losing a part of ourselves. Another important factor in our difficulty in letting go is self-deception. Although the relationship, or even the idea of the relationship, causes us suffering, our mind tends to convince us that this person is essential to our happiness. We create an illusion, building a sort of mental story that reinforces our attachment and makes disconnecting seem an impossible task. We tell ourselves that we couldn't be happy without that person, or that we'll never find a connection like that again, when in reality, it's precisely the attachment that keeps us in a state of anxiety and dependence. It's important to note that this type of attachment often has its own cycle. You might find yourself in a state of emotional dependency, where you experience a sense of high when you're close to that person or when things are going well, and then a deep low when the relationship or communication cools off. These highs and lows can be confusing and exhausting, reinforcing the idea that this person has the power to determine how you feel. The truth is that the real power over your emotions lies within you, and the first thing you need is to understand the root of this attachment. For this reason, today I invite you to view your situation from another perspective. Instead of trying to let go of someone or forcing yourself to emotionally disconnect, ask yourself, what am I really seeking in this person? What emotional void am I trying to fill? These questions can open a door for you to better understand the root of your attachment and begin the journey towards true emotional detachment. Emotional attachment is a powerful and, in many cases, completely natural phenomenon. As human beings, we have a fundamental need for connection and security, and in our relationships we find much of our sense of belonging and meaning. However, when this attachment becomes emotional dependence, it can make us feel trapped and without the freedom to be ourselves. But why does this happen? Why do some bonds become so intense and difficult to release? The first reason has to do with our need for belonging. From a young age, we seek in others the security, love, and validation we need to feel complete. This tendency to form close bonds is a basic characteristic of human nature and is deeply rooted in us. We want to feel that we are part of something greater, that someone understands us, and that we are important to that person. However, when this need for belonging is not well balanced, it can lead us to intense emotional dependence, where we begin to see the other person as the unique source of our worth and happiness. On the other hand, there are factors that intensify attachment and transform it into difficult-to-release emotional dependence. One of these factors is the idealization of the other. When we are emotionally attached, we tend to see the other person through a lens of perfection, ignoring or downplaying their flaws and amplifying their positive qualities. Idealization creates an almost perfect image of the other, making the bond even stronger and the idea of losing them seem unsustainable. By idealizing someone, we convince ourselves that this person is unique and that we'll never be able to find someone like them, which reinforces our dependence. Added to this are life experiences that can make attachment even stronger. People who have gone through experiences of rejection, abandonment, or loss in the past tend to develop more intense emotional bonds as a way to protect themselves from pain. For example, if at some point in life someone important left or rejected us, it's common to seek relationships that give us a constant sense of security, unconsciously trying to fill that void. These types of experiences lead us to cling to someone out of fear that history will repeat itself, to lose again something we consider essential for our well-being. But there's something else, something deeper that operates in our unconscious and intensifies our attachments. The emotional patterns we've created throughout our lives. These patterns function almost like internal scripts that we follow without realizing it, and that influence the way we relate. If we've learned that love implies sacrifice, pain, or insecurity, we're likely to unconsciously seek relationships that reflect these beliefs. Even when a relationship causes us suffering, we may feel drawn to remain in it because, in some way, we've learned to associate love with suffering. These patterns are not easy to recognize or change, but in doing so, we can begin to understand why certain attachments are so intense. Another important reason behind emotional attachment is the search for validation. Often we depend on the other person to feel valuable and accepted. It's as if we need that person to constantly confirm that we're important and worthy of love. This leads us to a sort of thirst for recognition where each gesture or word from the other person seems to reinforce our self-esteem. External validation becomes a need, and we feel that without that person, we'd lose our sense of identity and worth. Additionally, we can't ignore the power of shared experiences. The people with whom we share significant moments leave a deep mark on our lives. When someone has been present in important moments or has been part of our most personal stories, they become a part of ourselves. This creates a sort of emotional memory that makes the attachment feel even more intense. The person not only represents someone dear, but also symbolizes those memories, which makes letting go feel, in some way, like letting go of a part of our own history. Understanding why we attach to someone is the first step toward emotional detachment. Recognizing that our relationships are not solely based on love or affection, but also on emotional patterns, past experiences, and the search for validation gives us a new perspective on our situation. It allows us to see that, in many cases, the attachment is not so much to the person themselves, but to what they represent for us. The security, love, identity, and sense of belonging that we believe we need. By understanding these factors, we can begin to work on our own emotional independence, reducing dependency, and building a healthier relationship with ourselves. Detachment doesn't mean we stop loving or valuing someone. Rather, it means that we learn to regain our emotional power and find within ourselves what we seek in others. Achieving emotional detachment is one of the most complex challenges in our relationships, and it's easy to feel that it's a painful or even impossible process. But detachment isn't simply letting go of someone. It's much deeper than that. To emotionally disengage, we first need to understand what keeps us tied, why we have such strong bonds, and especially what we're seeking in the other person that makes them so hard to let go of. To begin this process, it's essential to understand what some call the hidden psychology of detachment. This idea is based on the fact that emotional detachment isn't only about stopping thinking about someone or reducing the time we spend together. It goes beyond that. Detachment requires reviewing our own emotional patterns, discovering our wounds, and connecting with a part of ourselves that we may have ignored for a long time. The first step in this process is to recognize our projections. In many relationships, especially those that cause us deep and painful attachment, we project onto the other person parts of ourselves that we haven't acknowledged or believe we need. That is, we unconsciously attribute to that person qualities or aspects that we feel are missing in ourselves. Perhaps we think they provide the security we can't find in ourselves, or that they give us the validation we seek externally. Recognizing these projections is key because it allows us to see that often the attachment isn't directed at the person themselves, but at what they represent for us. By understanding this, we can start asking a very important question. What are we really looking for in that person? Is it truly love we feel, or is it a need to fill an internal void? This questioning is the beginning of transformation, because it forces us to look inward and take responsibility for our own emotional needs. It helps us realize that detachment doesn't mean stopping caring for someone, but rather ceasing to depend on them to feel complete. The second step in this detachment process is to break down the idealizations. Many times, attachment is based on an idealization of the other person, on the belief that they're perfect or possess unique qualities that we couldn't find in anyone else. This idealization is an obstacle to detachment because it makes us feel that this person is irreplaceable. But in reality, idealization is a construct of our mind. It makes us see the other in a distorted way, as if they were the only source of our happiness or the only person capable of giving us what we need. To break down idealization, we need to see the other person as they are, with their flaws and limitations. This doesn't mean we stop appreciating the good in them, but rather that we learn to recognize that they're not a magical or perfect figure. By demystifying their image, we reduce their power over us and realize that our emotions may be less dependent on them than we thought. The third step is to reconnect with our own self. When we're deeply attached to someone, it's easy to forget our identity and our own needs. We become so dependent on the relationship that we start defining ourselves through the other person, losing sight of who we really are. Emotional detachment in this sense becomes a process of reunion with oneself, of remembering that we are complete individuals and that our happiness and emotional stability don't depend on anyone else. To reconnect with our own self, it's helpful to engage in activities that allow us to explore who we are outside the relationship. This can include hobbies, personal projects, or self-reflective practices such as meditation or journaling. The idea is to reconnect with those aspects of our life that bring us satisfaction and meaning, reminding us that our identity goes beyond any relationship. Additionally, in this detachment process, it's essential to practice acceptance and compassion toward oneself. Emotionally detaching from someone isn't an easy path, and it often involves feelings of guilt, sadness, or frustration. We may berate ourselves for not having let go earlier, or feel that we've been weak for depending on another person. It's essential to remember that detachment is a gradual process, and that it's entirely normal to feel intense emotions along the way. Self-compassion means allowing ourselves to feel without judging, to accept that we're in a process of growth, and that each step we take is valuable. It's not about forcing ourselves to stop feeling immediately, but about allowing ourselves to move forward at our own pace, respecting our emotions and being kind to ourselves. Finally, emotional detachment also involves learning to find peace in our solitude. For many people, the idea of being alone can be frightening, but it's in those moments of solitude that we truly learn to know and strengthen ourselves. Solitude doesn't have to be a state of emptiness. It can be an opportunity to nurture ourselves and discover an inner peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. This process may take time, but each step brings us closer to greater emotional independence and a more fulfilled, balanced life. When we stop projecting onto others what we need, stop idealizing, and learn to be at peace with ourselves, detachment becomes not only possible, but also liberating, because in the end, emotional detachment isn't a loss but a gain. It's the beginning of a new relationship with ourselves and the chance to experience love in a healthier, more authentic way. Now that we've understood the deep roots of attachment and how it affects our emotional peace, it's time to talk about practical solutions. Detaching emotionally doesn't happen overnight, but there are specific strategies that can help you start this process effectively, allowing you to move toward real emotional independence. The first step in emotionally detaching is to know yourself and understand the reasons behind that attachment. As we've seen, we often seek aspects in other people that we feel are missing, projecting onto them our own unmet needs and desires. To begin the detachment process, it's essential to take time to reflect on what you're really seeking in that person. One simple yet powerful technique is reflective writing. Take a notebook and start writing about your feelings, thoughts, and expectations toward that person. Ask yourself, what do I truly need from this relationship? Is it really love, or am I searching for something more? By putting your thoughts in writing, you may discover patterns and needs that you hadn't noticed before. This will allow you to recognize which aspects of your life require your attention and how you can work on fulfilling those needs without depending on another person. The second step is to strengthen your emotional independence. This means learning to enjoy your own company and discovering that you can find satisfaction and joy in your life without depending on anyone else. To strengthen your emotional independence, dedicate time to activities that make you feel good about yourself and help you grow as a person. Try hobbies or interests you may have set aside, set personal goals, or engage in activities that make you feel physically well like exercise or meditation. These moments of connection with yourself will remind you that you have a rich and meaningful life outside of any relationship. As you become more emotionally independent, you'll notice that the need to cling to someone else will naturally diminish. The third step is to use self-knowledge techniques that help you connect with your deepest emotions. In addition to reflective writing, there are other tools that can help you understand yourself better. One of them is dream analysis. Dreams are often a gateway to our unconscious and can reveal emotional patterns that we're unaware of. Keeping a dream journal and analyzing them will allow you to discover hidden aspects of your relationships and attachments, providing you with a deeper understanding of your feelings. Another useful technique is visualization. Imagine that you fully let go of that attachment and visualize what your life would be like without that emotional dependency. Try to picture the details, how you'd feel, what you'd do, and how you'd spend your time. This practice will help you envision a fulfilling life in which your emotional well-being doesn't depend on anyone, reinforcing in your mind the idea that it's possible to live in peace and balance. The fourth step is to develop acceptance and compassion toward yourself. Emotional detachment isn't a linear or quick process. It's likely that along the way you'll experience ups and downs, moments of frustration, and even doubts about whether you're doing the right thing. Therefore, it's essential to develop an attitude of acceptance and compassion toward yourself. Remember that this process is unique to each person and that there is no perfect time to achieve detachment. Practicing self-compassion means giving yourself permission to feel without judgment. If at any point you feel vulnerable or experience a setback in the process, instead of scolding or discouraging yourself, try to view those moments as learning opportunities. Self-compassion will allow you to move forward with gentleness and perseverance, without the pressure to achieve immediate results. You can practice self-compassion through meditation or conscious breathing, reminding yourself that every small step counts and that detachment is an act of self-love. The fifth step is to set healthy boundaries, both with the other person and with yourself. Boundaries help protect your well-being and prevent emotions from becoming overwhelming. Start by setting clear boundaries regarding the time and energy you dedicate to thinking about that person or communicating with them, especially if you're still in contact. For example, you might decide to reduce the frequency with which you check their social media, or set a rule to not talk about the relationship with close friends all the time. These boundaries will help you focus more on yourself and gradually reduce the intensity of the attachment. It's not necessary to cut contact completely, but setting boundaries will give you the necessary space to heal and strengthen yourself. The sixth step is to practice gratitude and focus on the present. Many times, emotional attachment arises because we're focused on the past or an imagined future. We think about happy moments or how things could have been, which fuels attachment and makes detachment difficult. A helpful strategy is to practice gratitude for the present moment. Focusing on what you have now and who you are helps you live in the present without relying on memories or expectations. A simple practice is to write down 3 things each day for which you feel grateful at that moment. They can be small things, like a moment of peace or something you accomplished during the day. Gratitude helps you see the richness of your life here and now, reducing the need to seek satisfaction in another person or in an idealized future. To understand how emotional detachment works in practice, it's valuable to observe examples of people who have gone through this process and succeeded in freeing themselves from relationships that caused them pain or dependency. While each story of transformation has its nuances, they all demonstrate that although emotional detachment can be challenging, it's possible to build a healthier relationship with oneself and, consequently, with others. Let's imagine a person who spent several years intensely attached to a romantic relationship. Although this relationship brought them some moments of joy, it also generated deep insecurity. Each argument or time apart awakened a huge fear of abandonment, and they found themselves trapped in a cycle of emotional dependency. Despite trying several times to emotionally distance themselves from their partner, each attempt made them feel as if they were losing a fundamental part of themselves. It wasn't simply love that kept them in this relationship. Rather, they had projected onto their partner their own unresolved insecurities and fears. Over time, this person decided to embark on the path of detachment, beginning with self-awareness. The first step they took was to keep a journal where they expressed their emotions, thoughts, and the reasons behind that dependency every day. As they reread their writings, they discovered that much of their attachment stemmed from a need for validation. They had convinced themselves that their worth was tied to being loved by another person. By becoming aware of this belief, they were able to start questioning it and working on strengthening their self-esteem, realizing that their worth was independent of external approval. Another interesting case is that of someone who, after a long relationship, couldn't stop thinking about their ex-partner, idealizing them and reliving happy moments. Although the relationship had ended, their mind remained trapped in nostalgia, wondering how things could have been different. This person decided to start the detachment process and began practicing visualization. Each day, they imagined what their life would be like without being trapped in the past. When those nostalgic thoughts returned, they tried to replace them with images of new opportunities and personal projects filled with satisfaction and meaning. Little by little, they felt their control over their emotions return to them and not to the influence of past memories. Finally, let's consider the case of someone who, after losing a loved one, experienced such deep pain that they found it difficult to move on with their life. The physical absence was a constant in their mind, and although they tried to move forward, each object or place that reminded them of that person made them relive the pain. To work on this detachment, they began practicing Jungian introspection techniques. They started analyzing their dreams and reflecting on the symbols that appeared, identifying the qualities that person represented for them. Over time, they understood that their attachment wasn't solely toward the loved one, but toward aspects of themselves that they projected onto that relationship. Recognizing this allowed them to honor the memory of their loved one without being bound to the pain, and they began to build a deeper internal connection with their own self. Each of these examples shows that the process of emotional detachment isn't an act of rejection, but rather a way to reconnect with oneself and rediscover one's own worth. These transformation stories show that detachment isn't about forgetting or stopping loving, but about freeing up emotional space to move forward in a more balanced and fulfilled way. Today, rather than just learning about detachment, we've explored the immense power of returning to ourselves. Detachment isn't a rejection of love or a sign of emotional coldness. It's an act of courage and respect for your own well-being. It's recognizing that even though someone has been an important part of your story, your essence and peace are your responsibility and can't depend on anyone else. Imagine what it could mean for you to regain that control. Picture yourself for a moment, waking up each day feeling complete, without the anguish of an unreciprocated love or the weight of memories that no longer serve you. Detachment is freeing up the space in your mind and heart to grow, to welcome new opportunities, and to build more balanced relationships, starting with the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. This process of emotional detachment is an invitation to freedom, not the freedom to be alone, but the freedom to consciously choose with whom you want to share your life without feeling trapped or dependent. It's a way of saying, I appreciate what I've experienced, but I'm also ready to move forward and create something new. Each step towards detachment is a declaration of self-confidence, a sign that you know you have what it takes to be happy, fulfilled, and complete on your own. So, if today you feel it's time to let go, take that first step. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it may feel like you lack the strength, but trust that within you exists an enormous capacity for transformation and healing. Just like a wound that gradually heals, detachment is a process in which you'll discover that you're not losing someone else, but reclaiming your own power. Allow yourself to be free from external expectations, from loves that stayed in the past, and from anything that limits you, because you have the right to be happy, and you deserve to live in peace. This journey toward detachment isn't a goodbye to feelings, but a hello to the most authentic and powerful version of yourself. So the call is clear. Take the first step towards a life of emotional well-being. Don't look back with regret. Instead, look forward with hope. The best thing you can do for yourself is to free yourself from what no longer serves you and embrace the self-love that awaits you in each decision to let go. And if this video has helped or inspired you, remember to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may benefit. Every small gesture counts on this journey towards a life of emotional freedom.